There's a saying in New York, if someone wants your car bad enough, they'll get it. But nobody ever imagined a thief so cunning, so invisible, that even the NYPD had to admit they had nothing, not a fingerprint, not a witness, not even a trace of rubber left behind. Thousands of high-end cars vanished from the city's streets, parking garages and dealership lots without so much as a whisper. It was as if the wind had driven them away. But it wasn't the wind. It was a ghost with a military past. A man who slipped into America like a shadow with one goal: build the most sophisticated car theft operation the country had ever seen, and get out before anyone knew his name. That name? Min Jin Yang. On paper, he didn't exist. No one could tie him to anything, not directly. But behind the scenes, he orchestrated a criminal empire that stripped the city of its luxury, one stolen car at a time. To understand how this began, we have to step back, not just to New York, but across the ocean to Shanghai. After being discharged from China's military intelligence in the 1990s, Yang didn't fade into obscurity. He saw something others missed. In China, demand for Western luxury cars was exploding, yet importing them legally was a labyrinth of red tape and taxes. But what if you didn't follow the rules? What if you could offer the same cars at half the price? Yang knew how the black market worked. More importantly, he knew how to navigate the cracks in the system. He approached a powerful gang leader in Shanghai with a proposition. He would provide the cars, smuggled from America, while the gang handled distribution. The leader bit immediately. It was too good to pass up. They struck a deal. Yang would receive a 40% cut, and to kick things off, the gang fronted him $500,000. His target? New York City, a playground for the wealthy, teeming with Bentleys, BMWs, Range Rovers, and Mercedes, rolling gold mines parked in broad daylight. He entered the US under a fake name, Kenny, and blended in like any struggling immigrant. No flash, no arrogance, just a man in an aging Nissan Altima, quietly slipping through the veins of a city that never sleeps. But behind his modest front, Yang was calculating, precise. He didn't want to be seen because the less people knew, the safer he was. His first step was logistics. Where do you hide stolen cars in a city swarming with surveillance? After weeks of scouting, he and his partner, Poi Chow, secured a quiet warehouse in an unsuspecting neighborhood. No major crime, no police heat. To throw off suspicion, they dressed the facility to look like a food storage company, complete with pallets of dry goods stacked up front. They even installed surveillance cameras of their own, watching every corner of the street. But Yang wasn't a thief, not directly. He was a strategist, a ghostwriter to crime. So he needed boots on the ground, hands that could lift the cars while he pulled strings from behind the curtain. Enter Dean. Yang found Dean at a salvage car auction. Dean had the right reputation, slick with machines, cautious, but connected. Yang offered him a role not as a simple thief, but as the front man for an operation unlike anything the East Coast had seen. Dean wouldn't work alone. He had the freedom to recruit others, and he knew just the man to bring in first. Mario Lopez, a legend among car thieves, known for his ability to crack a vehicle's onboard system in seconds flat. Mario didn't steal cars the way amateurs did. No broken windows, no hot wiring. He slid through security like a coder breaking a firewall. His trick? A laptop and less than a minute. He'd bypass the car's anti-theft software, reprogram the ignition, and make it drive off like it belonged to him. It was surgical. And with Yang's funding and Dean's network, Mario was unleashed on the city. Soon, high-end cars began vanishing. From driveways, upscale malls, office parks, anywhere the wealthy parked. Once a vehicle was stolen, it wasn't rushed to the warehouse. That would be reckless. Yang had protocols. Each car was parked for 48 hours in a quiet, affluent neighborhood where other luxury cars were common. If no police showed up, it meant the GPS hadn't pinged, and it was safe to move. Then came the next phase. The stolen car was quietly brought within blocks of the warehouse, but never directly. Dean would handle the final leg. He would drive the car in slow, looping patterns to check for tails, while Chow monitored the streets from surveillance feeds. If anything looked suspicious, they aborted. But when the coast was clear, Dean brought the car in. Inside, a team of Yang's trusted Chinese workers restored each vehicle to showroom condition. Locks replaced, paint polished, electronics reprogrammed. When they were done, the cars looked brand new, untouchable. The shipping strategy? Genius. The cars were loaded into containers labeled as dry food goods. Each container's weight was carefully calibrated to match the expected weight on the falsified manifest. The containers didn't head to Brooklyn, where customs officers might already be sniffing for stolen goods. No, Yang sent them to New Jersey, where they were loaded onto trains headed across the country. Destination: California. From there, the containers boarded ships that didn't go directly to China. Instead, mid-sea, they were transferred onto private vessels with secret manifests and invisible routes. By the time the cars reached Chinese shores, they were ghosts, untraceable, unsuspicious, and incredibly profitable. Over the next 5 years, Yang's empire flourished. Thousands of vehicles disappeared under New York's nose, and Yang made tens of millions. Still, demand in China outpaced supply, so he got bolder. Car dealerships became the next target. Mario would pose as a buyer, visit the dealership, and mentally map out security protocols. Once he knew where the keys were kept, he'd return under cover of darkness, break in, and swipe keys to several luxury cars. He and his crew would be in and out in minutes, each driving off in a different direction. But then, a mistake. One of the stolen cars crashed. The driver was caught, interrogated, and cracked. He gave up Mario. He gave up Dean. The NYPD suddenly had leads. Surveillance teams were mobilized, and Dean was tailed carefully, leading them closer to Yang's hidden world. But Yang had prepared for this. When Chow noticed an unfamiliar car lingering near their warehouse, he raised the alarm. Yang didn't panic. He calmly activated contingency plans. Trucks rolled in and out, appearing to move dry food shipments. In reality, they were emptying the warehouse of stolen cars, tools, and evidence right in front of the police. The disguise was so seamless, the surveillance teams had no idea what they were witnessing. By the time investigators broke into the warehouse, it was stripped clean. Yang had vanished again. But the chase wasn't over. Dean's phone was still being tapped. And one day, a call came in. A voice they hadn't heard before, speaking in coded terms. "I'm back," the voice said. "I've got an order for 260. The voice belonged to Kenny. The police suspected, but couldn't prove, it was Yang. He was cautious now. Phones were changed regularly. Conversations were cryptic, yet the net was tightening. And for the first time, Yang didn't realize just how close they were. It started with a quiet betrayal. A single GPS signal flickered to life inside a warehouse that had, for years, been invisible to law enforcement. It wasn't part of the plan. Not Yang's plan. Not Mario's. And certainly not the plan that kept them one step ahead for half a decade. But this time, someone forgot the rules. The night had begun like so many others. Mario Lopez and his crew had struck a parking garage with surgical precision. Luxury cars were lined up like a buffet. And thanks to a backdoor deal with the garage attendant, a man lured by the promise of $500 per vehicle, they had access to the keys, the alarms, everything. They even tied the man up afterward to make it look like a robbery, protecting him from suspicion. They drove away clean, or so they thought. In the rush, no one checked the cars for trackers. No 2-day cool-down period. No cautious staging. They went straight to the warehouse, a mistake born not from arrogance, but fatigue. Even the smartest criminals forget how fragile their world is when they've been winning too long. That's when the local police got a ping. One of the car's owners had reported it missing. Their GPS provider tracked the signal, leading straight to Yang's warehouse. Only the responding officer had no idea what he was walking into. He wasn't part of the ongoing surveillance. He didn't know this location was the centerpiece of a 5-year investigation. He just followed the blinking dot. As his cruiser rolled up to the nondescript building, Yang's men inside saw him on their cameras. Panic didn't erupt, but quiet urgency did. Tools were dropped, orders barked. Workers vanished through side exits like smoke. The surveillance team, watching the warehouse in silence from afar, realized what was happening. They had no time to wait. They moved in. The warehouse doors were flung open, and what they found inside made their blood run cold. Dozens of freshly stolen vehicles, reprogramming kits, smuggling gear, everything was still there. It was the break they had been chasing for years. The operation had finally cracked wide open. But Yang, Kenny, wasn't there. He was at home, calm, distant, detached. What he didn't know was that his home had been under surveillance too. When his warehouse workers were apprehended, officers stationed outside his residence got the signal. This time, they weren't going to let the ghost slip away. As Yang stepped outside, maybe for a walk, maybe to disappear, the officers closed in. Guns drawn, voices loud, flashing lights bouncing off his stunned face. The man who had once outwitted America's best was now just a suspect in handcuffs. Back at headquarters, the mystery unraveled. His name wasn't Kenny. It was Min Jin Yang, former intelligence officer, expert in smuggling and counter-surveillance. He wasn't a petty thief. He was the architect of a black market highway stretching from New York to China. But here's the twist that stunned investigators. They couldn't charge him with theft. Not directly. He never touched the cars, never picked a lock, never broke a window. Every move he made was buffered by layers of deniability. He was the maestro, not the muscle. All they could pin on him was enterprise corruption, leading a criminal organization. So he took a deal. 10 years. Just 10 years. For over 3,000 luxury vehicles stolen and smuggled out of the country. For over $40 million made, money stashed outside American jurisdiction, likely sitting in offshore accounts or reinvested into businesses in Shanghai. The government couldn't touch a cent. In their final report, investigators estimated that the value of Yang's haul would be worth more than $75 million in today's money. They didn't recover a single dollar, and they never found the ships. Despite all the evidence, the surveillance, the GPS trackers, and the warehouse raids, they still couldn't definitively map the final path those cars took once they left American soil. Yang had compartmentalized his empire so perfectly that even with names, addresses, and equipment, the deepest secrets died with the system he built. The most brilliant criminal minds know how to weaponize silence. Still, for those watching the story unfold, detectives, journalists, the public, it was hard not to feel both awe and frustration. How could one man, alone in a foreign country, with no roots, no allies outside his circle, run the biggest car theft operation in modern American history? How did he keep it going for 5 straight years without even a whisper making it to the surface? Some said it was his military training. Others credited his cold discipline. But those closest to the investigation believed something deeper. Yang understood people. He knew how fear worked, how greed worked, and most importantly, how to disappear behind other people's mistakes. Even in custody, Yang said very little. When questioned, he kept answers short. His confessions were limited to what prosecutors already knew. He played the game like a man who knew exactly what cards were on the table and which ones were never going to be seen. Dean, Mario, and other members of the ring faced longer sentences. Their fingerprints were everywhere. Surveillance tapes, phone calls, physical evidence. They were the hands of the operation, and they paid the price. Yang was the ghost. By the time the public heard about the case, it was nearly over. Headlines screamed about the car theft kingpin who fooled New York. News anchors speculated about how many more were involved. Think tanks dissected the case as a lesson in globalized crime. But for the detectives who had chased him for half a decade, there was no celebration. Just a dull ache of a battle won, but a war that slipped away. Because even behind bars, Yang had won. He had gamed the system, lived like a phantom, left no traceable wealth for the US to seize. He would serve 10 years and likely retire to a life of quiet luxury somewhere across the ocean. In the end, New York never saw the cars again. They were gone, just like him. And now, here's the haunting part. Many believe that Yang wasn't the only one, that others watched, learned, and took notes, because after his arrest, the city didn't breathe a sigh of relief. The cars still kept disappearing, not as many, not as frequently, but the pattern never truly died. It's as if Yang lit a match, and while he may be gone, the fire he started still burns in the shadows. We have reached the end of our story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.